Good afternoon and welcome to RDA's Tech Talk. Today's topic will be migrating to SQL 2014, options and considerations. And RDA's Tech Talk is a series designed to be about 25 to 30 minutes of a technical presentation. And we will open it up for questions at the end as well. So before I turn it over to our presenter for today, I'll just cover just a few logistics. So as I said, you'll be able to ask those questions and send them along at any time using the GoToWebinar Q&A interface, and we will cover as many of those at the end as we can. And then we also are recording today's session, so we will share that on our LinkedIn group. And for those of you who may want to take that and share it with others on your team. And also at the end of the presentation, when you exit GoToWebinar, we have a survey window that's going to pop up asking just a few questions to help us out to enhance your experience for the next Tech Talk. So if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to respond, that would be great. And to thank you, we will pick 2 lucky survey responders from today's session to receive a $15 Papa John's gift certificate for helping us out. So with all that being covered, I'd like to get to why you guys joined today and introduce our speaker, Derek Hall. So Derek is a senior software engineer with RDA, and he's been developing Microsoft Business Intelligence solutions since 2001 and has worked with data warehousing since 1992. He's implemented data warehousing and BI solutions in the insurance, health, utilities, banking, and retail industries. And his experience includes data warehouse architecture, business intelligence strategy, and delivery and data integration. So Derek, thanks for joining us today, and I will turn the presentation over to you.
Thank you, Patty. Today we'll be talking about options and considerations for migrating to SQL Server 2014. We'll cover new features that will help you make the case to make the conversion or the migration. We'll talk about your options for migrating, whether it be in place, new install, or Windows Azure. And then we'll also talk about considerations for each one of those options, some including whether you want to go to an on-premise migration or a cloud migration or a hybrid of the two. We'll talk about license availability and features currently in use, and we'll have a review. I want to start off discussing some of the new features of SQL 2014. The biggest talked about one from my perspective that I've just seen so much being written about and talked about is the in-memory OLTP. Which is in-memory optimization. This will significantly improve your OLTP database performance. This option is integrated directly into the server engine, so there's really nothing to install otherwise. There's no additional installation steps. In order to use it, you define a heavily accessed table as memory optimized. And what this does is it gives you a lock and latch free environment for your workloads. It's fully transactional, it's durable, and you can access either the memory in-memory tables with the disk-based tables in the same query using the same standard T-SQL. It basically will help you eliminate your contention. It's more effective for data access, low latency, and pretty much from all the experience that I've seen and heard, performance increases of 5 times are extremely common. I've heard people getting performance increases as high as 50 times prior to the prior performance. I think that's probably a little bit on the high end. Common performance gains are definitely in the 20 to 25 range, and I've seen that firsthand as well. Their additional performance features are enhanced query processing. The query optimizer has been improved. There's an extension of buffer pools to solid-state disks, and there's enhanced in-memory ColumnStore for the data warehouse. There is, in addition to that, there's an I/O governance was added to the resource governor, and you can also rebuild a single partition while keeping the tables online, which is, if you employ partitioning, it's very nice. From a high availability perspective, previous versions had 4 secondary replicas. It's now enhanced to be increased up to 8. There's delayed durability for transactions. What this means is control is returned back to the client before the transaction log is written. So that'll help with your application performance by giving control back and maintaining the transaction on the database side. You can also create Azure replicas. So if you have an on-premise database, you want to create a replicas to Azure. It's simple it's actually just a few clicks to create those replicas up on Azure. And additionally, you have readable secondary. Your readable secondaries remain accessible while your cluster is down, or you're doing an upgrade on one of the other machines. From a security perspective, they've added backup encryption. The backup encryption is actually done during the backup, so it's basically part of the process. It's not like you had the backup before and then encrypt the backup. It's done in process. The common criteria certification is now at the high assurance level, and you can backup data can be encrypted and sent to Azure, and the key would remain local. And it has enhanced encryption key management as well. There are some expanded permissions from a DBA side that are actually very nice, that include a connect to any database permission, which allows you to grant that permission to a user today. And any databases that you add in the future, they automatically get that access to that based upon that grant. Therefore, you won't have to go back. And if you have 5 or 6 people who you need to always have access to that database, you won't have to go back every time you add a database in order to grant that right. There's also an impersonate any login, which allows you to block or allow the impersonation, which is nice if you want to keep the highest level access people from being impersonated. And then from a additional BI perspective or access perspective, there's a lot of new features for easy access to the data, big data, your normal small data with your familiar tool sets of Office. Then there's additional new tools, Power Query, Power BI, Power Map, and HD Insights for Windows Azure. From a migration perspective, the first thing that we want to do is ensure that you perform a full backup prior to any upgrade. Not every option of upgrade requires the backup, but it's always a good idea to have that backup. There's an upgrade advisor utility which you run. It analyzes the complete database and the major components, and it'll provide warnings for changes that you currently use that maybe are no longer available, or other areas that you may see some effect. There's an option for clicking other upgrade issues, and what this does is it actually produces a report that will go through and identify other issues that may pop up within your applications or your servers that aren't necessarily related to the database per se, but could have an effect on your upgrade. And you also want to ensure that any major functionality that you're adding or using is supported in your target version. You basically have three options for migration. One is a new installation. You can actually install it on a new server, a new machine, or do a side-by-side installation with a previous version. You can do an in-place upgrade, or you can use Windows Azure. There's options for Azure is to just use the database or to have a virtual machine running SQL Server. For a new installation, a full backup will be needed. The new installation is probably the most time-consuming of the migrations. The nice thing about the new installations is it's all new, so you can add new database features easily just by checking a selection box. You'll see in the side-by-side that has to be done separately. All the components that you want to install are just easy click. If you use the installation center, it's all just checkboxes. That leads us to the methods. You can use the installation center, or you can actually use a command line with a configuration file. And listed there are the supported versions. In order to upgrade to 2014, you have to be at each level of those or better, or greater, I'm sorry, to do the upgrade. For a new installation, there's several things to consider. For a side-by-side, do you want to do the same server side-by-side, or do you want to add a new server? Obviously, if you're adding a new server, you're going to incur more costs, more overhead, additional work. The advantage is you're going to minimize registry and system corruption. In many instances, I've seen several clients actually go through a migration and then do an in-place upgrade, and because multiple people had done multiple work on the machines, DLL files are missing, or they've had other issues where files are moved and they're no longer found, and then it becomes a whole repair issue, which can really snowball into more time and more costs. It also requires an additional license because you're actually going to be creating another machine, and you can easily restore your custom settings and properties based upon your previous installation. For an in-place upgrade, there is really no need for a backup and restore, but it's definitely recommended. It's always good to have a backup. You never know what will happen during the process. The method is basically the same. You can do the SQL Server Installation Center or the command line, and the supported versions are exactly the same as the in-place or the new installation. For an in-place upgrade for the database engine, you can't add new database features. So you would have to just install the database just like you did previously in the previous version. And if you had new features that you wanted to add after that in-place upgrade is completed, you would then have to go back and add those features separately. One of the impacts is if you use full text, and there's three options to upgrading that. You can do an import, which basically will import the previous full text catalog, and that does not use any of the 2014 enhancements. You can rebuild, which would give you the full enhancement use, but that's definitely time consuming, and it's going to require additional memory and CPU, which may cost you depending on your situation. And then there's a reset as well. The reset keeps the metadata intact, but the catalog is basically removed, and then you must manually do a full population for that. You're not required to update all the components as you're installing, but Microsoft highly recommends it. From a replicated database perspective, the nice thing is other nodes remain active during the upgrade. So you typically won't have downtime. From a publisher perspective, it basically stays with the typical topography of your replication. Your distributor version has to be greater than or equal to the publisher, and then the subscriber depends, as it states here, a transactional must be within 2 versions plus or minus, and the merge has to be less than or equal to. From an analysis services perspective, if you do an in-place upgrade, the program files are replaced. So they're basically overwritten in the same file location, and the folders are all renamed. It's actually a choice. You can actually automatically migrate the existing databases to the new instance, or you can leave them in the old instance and run them at a compatibility mode, or you can migrate those up to the new compatibility level. You can do a side-by-side upgrade. That does pose some problems as the files being renamed. There's multiple versions. It can be pretty difficult at times. From an integration services perspective, from an in-place upgrade, it's basically a side-by-side install. The earlier version is not removed. And because of that, then you have basically two existing DT exec paths that wouldn't change. So if you were to want to change jobs to that are executing it, you would have to then go back and update the file system path for those, for that new path, unless you wanted to keep it to the old version. What I've seen in the past is people will do an in-place upgrade and do a side-by-side on the integration services, and then over time they'll migrate piece by piece everything over and then eventually eliminate the old version. One of the biggest gotchas in this process is from the security perspective. The SSIS service is now fully secure by default. So previously you would have access to run the service just by getting access to the database. Now you actually have to explicitly give users the ability to run the service, which is an additional step. An in-place upgrade for reporting services is really pretty simple. It's typically part of the process when you're doing the database engine. Within the wizard, it will detect the existing reporting services instances and ask, do you want to upgrade these or not? You do not have to migrate. You can actually have the two instances side by side, but only in native mode. You can also not do an upgrade from native mode to SharePoint mode. you would have to do a new install there. And the databases and the configuration files are easily migrated within that process as well. For Windows Azure, there's two options. You can have the SQL database, which is basically your data is stored only in Azure. So you still handle all the logical administration. Microsoft handles that physical end. In this instance, the tables require a clustered index before being deployed. There are a lot of limitations to this option, and that certain features that aren't available in that option. So really, you need to refer to the Azure website for a complete listing. Then you also have SQL Server VMs, virtual machines. This is basically full SQL Server functionality. It's them hosting a machine like you would in on-premise in Azure. The one major thing is there's no failover clustering. The logical and physical administration falls on you. It has excellent scalability. They offer models that allow you to scale up and scale down based upon use for processor and space. And to deploy a database from a previous version or even 2014 to Azure is really just a few mouse clicks, and it's deployed. Very simple, very easy. And then there's some hybrid solutions where you back up your on-premise to Azure and just use that for your data backups, or you can also store your data in your log storage. And it's also used a lot for disaster recovery. So as a review, there's a number of features to increase performance and ease the administration effort. I really only touched on a small handful. There are a lot of improvements in this last release of 2014. I encourage you to go to the website, Microsoft's website, and explore, because there really are a lot. You have three options for your migration: new installation, in-place upgrade, and Windows Azure. The majority of these are all very simple migrations to do. It's just a matter of what are your requirements. And most of all, it's just understand your requirements, do your homework, and ensure that you have all your bases covered. These references exist. This is the two references for the major pages. Both of these split off into an unusual large amount of information. And thank you. And if there's any questions, feel free to ask.
Yep, thank you, Derek. So again, if you'd like to submit a question, you can certainly do so by using the Q&A interface. We do have one question, so I'll go ahead and with that one. Can we migrate FileMaker, looks like version 11.0 database to SQL Server 2014? I don't know if that's too specific for you, Derek, that we might have to.
Yeah, that would be something that we would probably have to look at. You know, I don't know if it would specifically be a migration, but I have, you know, personally done database migrations from multiple other platforms to SQL Server. It just probably won't be as simple as, you know, in that instance you would have to create a new SQL Server instance and install the database, and then, you know, process the data using SSIS or some of the other utilities, maybe a data import or something from FileMaker over. I mean, it's definitely possible. It's probably just not as simple as doing a migration from 2012 or 2008 to 2014.
Great. All right, thank you. Don't see any additional questions. Whoop, I might have had just one come in. Hold on. Yes. What is the benefit of using Windows 2012 R2 for SQL 2014?
Windows 2012, meaning Windows Server, I believe, is that what, I assume that's what they mean, Windows 2012 Server R2.
Yes, yep.
Yeah. The Windows Server R2 is a pretty large change in architecture from the previous version of 2003, and in many instances, in order to use a good number of the enhancements, Server 2012 R2 is going to be required, just because of the architecture within the Windows. So the advantage is definitely there. From my experience in the last probably 8 months with the clients that I've worked with, I would say half are running at Windows Server 2012 and half are still at the older version. And there's definitely the benefits of some additional functionality.
Great. All right. So hopefully that answers your question. It looks like we are just about out of time. I don't see any further questions. So with that, I'm going to thank Derek for joining us today. And again, this closes us out for year 2014. So have a great rest of the day, and we look forward to you joining us next time for upcoming RDA programs in the new year. Thank you, and happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you. Happy holidays.